What is going on, everyone? This is Zach from Clutch Crew Sports, back with another 2022 NFL team preview, season preview here. And on today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the Arizona Cardinals. So, this is the first NFC West team we've done. We are going to get to all 32 teams eventually before the season starts, but we just haven't done the NFC West teams yet, and I'm going to kick things off with the Arizona Cardinals. So, the first thing that I wanted to talk about with the Cardinals is something that gets mentioned a lot, but it's their problem of finishing the season strong. Last year, as you can see here, they went just 2-4 in the final 6 games of the regular season, and then they ended up losing their wild card playoff game pretty badly to the Rams. So, this was just a really unfortunate case for the Cardinals. It was looking like they were easily going to win the division, and then who knows what happens if the Rams don't have home field throughout the playoffs. So if maybe they play in Arizona, maybe the result's different. I don't know, considering they did lose to the Rams in December at home, but I know they beat them once earlier in the year. And also, too, just you always want to be playing your best in December going into January and February. That's just the case with every team. That's what every team wants to do. It's just that this has been a trend for the Cardinals. This isn't the first time. Other years, it's been a trend, and it's really been a trend for head coach Cliff Kingsbury as well throughout his college time, and also Kyler Murray, too. It's just, what will we see from them in the playoffs? This team had such high expectations that after the bye week and everything, and then it all just kind of fell apart. And some of these were bad too. That loss at Detroit 30-12 was bad. The end of the season, losing to Seattle, that was bad. Indy was a good team, but still they lost that one, and then the Rams, obviously. So, just kind of, if it wasn't for the Dallas game, they would have had 5 losses in a row heading into the playoffs, which it's very rare to see a team do that and then end up having success. So, I think what this means is just, honestly, the coaching has to be better. Once the tape, and this will, talking about tape, we'll talk about Kyler Murray in a second, but the tape on this, late in the season, you have 10 games of film. Your opponents have that knowledge on you, and it's just a case, I think, of them not having great coaching adjustments, with that tape out there, and other teams taking advantage of it, and then it shows late in the season. It's one of these things that if it happens once, people don't really think about it, but considering it's happened so many times, it's something that's really concerning for the Cardinals. And I think there's nothing wrong about starting the season off good like they did. It's great to do that, but you really want to end the season on a good note as well. So next we'll talk about the rocky offseason that the Cardinals had. Obviously the playoff loss was really bad. Kyler Murray looked terrible in it. The whole team looked bad. And then this offseason hasn't gone well either for him. First of all, before I get to Kyler, I'll talk about Rodney Hudson mulling over retirement, not showing up. People were speculating if he was going to retire. It looks like he's coming back, but still, that's not a good sign. Obviously, he's up there in age as well. He's an older guy, but still, the questions of him retiring or not, and then DeAndre Hopkins getting that suspension for I think 6 weeks or something like that for his PED bust. So Kyler's going to be without their top receiver. And then speaking of Kyler, obviously, the whole contract situation about him unfollowing the team on social media, it was, people were talking about him going to play baseball and all these things. Does he want are the Cardinals done with him? It seemed like the Cardinals put out the reports that he was lazy and all this stuff. It seemed like both sides were really going at each other. And quite honestly, that's never good. Quarterback and team have to be aligned. And They clearly weren't. And then when the contract broke, I think it was good for them to get the contract done. But then, the fine details come out about the study clause, essentially, where he has to watch 4 hours of game film. And unless the team intentionally did this to light a fire under his skin, and like, because they knew, if the team knew that this was going to be brought up in the news and it would light a fire under his skin, like, then that's a next level actually smart move. But I just don't think they did that. I think they thought no one would notice this, or it wouldn't be a big deal. But clearly, it was a big deal for how unique it was. And then it just brings up all the questions. Why did they pay him all this money if they really don't believe he's watching the film and studying and preparing like all the other great quarterbacks do? And then that's just not good. And you don't want to have your quarterback asking and having to answer questions like that. Now, personally, I don't actually view this as a super bad thing. I don't think it's like, oh my God, this guy sucks now. I think he's still really a good quarterback. It's obviously becoming a problem where they either don't think he's doing enough to prepare, or they know he's not doing enough to prepare. And I think ultimately things will work out here, but still, it's adding on top of everything that happened. I think some people did overreact to this and how bad it was, but like, he had a good season last year. Clearly at the end of the year he needed to get better, but you look at the whole season, it wasn't a bad season. So this offseason, though, has just brought up a whole bunch of negative news for the Cardinals. And then, in my opinion, still, there's question marks all around this team. It's definitely an older team. If you look at their depth chart, you've got older guys around there, obviously, like A.J. Green, J.J. Watt. Hopkins is getting up there. But Chandler Jones, he left the team, sack leader for him. Nobody had been getting more sacks than Chandler Jones over the course of his time in Arizona. So that's obviously huge shoes to fill for whoever ends up having to replace that production. And I just don't, looking at this defense, other than some members in the secondary, which I like, the defensive line, in my opinion, without Chandler Jones, really isn't that great. I think they're going to take a step back on defense because of losing a guy like Chandler Jones. And then sticking with the defense, there's also just big questions on their recent first-round picks, Zaven Collins and Isaiah Simmons. Now, Simmons was obviously a top 10 pick, so there was more expectations for him, and he's also been in the league longer than Collins has. But either, no matter what, both these guys have been disappointments for first-round picks. They need to play better, at the linebacker position. Simmons, he hasn't really found a home yet. That was kind of the thing, when he came out in the draft, was how he could play all these different positions and stuff. He was, he can go here, he can do that, he can go over there. But just really hasn't worked out with the Cardinals. So, they want him to stick more at the traditional linebacker role. And it's a case where after this season, I think we'll get a better idea of if he's truly a bust or not. I'm not ready to say that yet, but he clearly hasn't lived up to what he was supposed to be. And then Collins, too, last year wasn't very good from reports, out of position a lot, which happens with young guys. But still, the defense has question marks, obviously, losing a leader like Jones, and then these young linebackers not necessarily living up to the hype. Because it's clear the Cardinals have spent resources on the defense. It hasn't just been all offense. And, they had good results earlier in the year, but then, in the playoffs they got gashed, obviously. The health of J.J. Watt is always a question mark, considering his age and how many injuries he's had. So while I like the player J.J. Watt, I just don't know about his health situation. And then also you have the trade where they give up their first round pick for Marquise Hollywood Brown from the Ravens, which, I mean, I guess it was okay. I think for them, though, I guess I would have rather kept Christian Kirk than trade for Hollywood Brown. But, obviously he knows Lamar well. Both the guys played at Oklahoma. But I want to say that Hollywood was in some sort of legal thing, like a DUI maybe or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what it was, honestly, but this is being recorded, a little while after this was news. But his status is uncertain. I don't know what he's got going for him, and it's never great to be in the news for wrong things when you join a team. It'd be bad if he was still in Baltimore too, obviously. But when you join a new team, you really don't want those sort of distractions coming up. So that just adds to the question marks, the uncertainties, the rocky offseason. Now, looking at the schedule, they could do really good. They could surprise us. They could also really fall off a cliff from last year. Their over under set at 9.5, and I think I'm gonna go under on this one. Actually, I think 8 wins, 9 wins. For them to get 9.5 over, they'd have to get 10 wins. I see them more in the 8-9 range, honestly, than the 10-11. Last year they were set at 8.5, and they were over that at 11. So they were easily over last year. No surprise that that was the case, because they did have a good season, 11-6, but the end of the year really really hurt them. But looking at the schedule here, I know it's a real tough start. You got the Chiefs, the Raiders, the Rams the first 3 weeks. I could easily see them starting 0-3. Now I think they'd be a good 0-3 team, but that's still pretty tough. And then you've got some more winnable games there. Panthers all the way through the Saints and the Vikings, Seahawks. It's really, in my opinion, their division that's going to hold them back from having a great season. They got to play San Fran, the defending champion LA Rams, and Seattle twice a year. Now Seattle, they're in definitely like a rebuild sort of situation, but they're still a tough team. I don't see, we always talk about Seattle as an easy win for these teams, but this is a rivalry game. This is a game where I remember when Arizona was clearly worse than Seattle, that they'd beat them, and now Seattle's clearly worse than Arizona. They've beat them, no problem. So that's not a gimme game, either of those, especially the on the road week 6. But then also at the end of the year, Buccaneers, Broncos, Chargers. It's obviously no schedule's easy, but it does look to me to be a little bit tough of a schedule. And so that's why I've got, 8 or 9 wins, just because their division and some of the other teams that they play out of the AFC, they got to play the AFC West, it looks like. So, yeah, guys, with that being said, that's going to wrap this up. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on the Arizona Cardinals next year. How do they do now that there's definitely more expectations that they made the playoffs, but also at the same time, we're not expecting them to improve on what they did last year. So let us know in the comments, and until then, remember, guys, be clutch.